Day 453 of doing a LeetCode problem every day until I get a job. All right, y'all, we're back again another day, another LeetCode problem where we're doing daily LeetCode problems. And today we have question number 2419, longest subarray with the maximum bitwise and. The difficulty level is medium, but don't worry because you already know we're going to keep the solution as simple and easy to understand as possible. But before we get started, y'all, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And if you need any new Apple AirPods, go ahead and check out that link in the description so you can get you some. Now let's see what the question says. You are given an integer array nums of size n. Consider a non-empty subarray from nums that has the maximum possible bitwise and. In other words, let k be the maximum value of the bitwise and of any subarray of nums. Then only subarrays with a bitwise and equal to k should be considered. Return the length of the longest such subarray. The bitwise and of an array is the bitwise and of all the numbers in it. A subarray is a contiguous sequence of elements within the array. All right, y'all, so that may sound a little bit confusing at first, so let's go ahead and take a look at these examples. And before we get into the examples, let's go over how the bitwise and actually works. So the bitwise and works by when we are comparing numbers. If we compare two ones, then two ones, then it's going to be a 1. Anything else is going to be a 0. So if we're comparing a 0 and 1, it'll be a 0. Comparing a 1 and 0, it's going to be a 0. Or we compare two zeros, it's going to be a 0. So let me show you what I mean by that. So let's say we're comparing the number 5, which would be 101 in binary, and the number 3, right? Which would be 011. So when we compare these two using the bitwise and, that is going to be, so when we compare these two bits, those are two ones. Or let's start from this side. So when we compare these two bits, this is going to be a 1 and a 0. So since it's a 1 and a 0, it's going to be a 0. Then this, when we compare these two bits, this is also now, this is a 0 and a 1. So when we compare those, that's going to be a 0. Then once we compare these two, which is a 1 and a 1, then that's going to be a 1. And then our final answer will be this right here, 001, which is equal to 1 in binary. So just in case that didn't make sense, let's just go over one more example. Let's go over 6 and 2. Let's say we're doing 6. 6 would be 110, and let's do 2. 2 would be 010. Boom. 010. So when we compare these two numbers, when we're right here, we're comparing the 1 and the 0, so that's going to be a 0. Then we come right here, this is a 1 and a 1, so that's going to be a 1. And then this right here is 2 zeros, so that's going to be a 0. So our final answer would be 010, which would be equal to 2. So that's how the bitwise and works. What we want to do is use this bitwise and operator and find the maximum value we can by comparing the numbers in this array, and then we want to return, it can be the subarray, we want to return the longest subarray possible. So let's go through it. In example 1, the input nums is an array of integers 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, and 2. The output is 2. Explanation says the maximum bitwise and of a subarray is 3. The longest subarray with that value is 3 and 3, so we return an answer of 2, right? So the longest or the maximum possible bitwise of this array right here would be 3. And so we have one subarray. This right here could be a subarray with the bitwise and of 3. This right here could also be a subarray with the bitwise and of 3. But this right here, if we have the 2 3s, this is also a subarray that has a bitwise and of 3. So, since this is the maximum, we want the longest subarray, right? So since this has 2 elements and that's longer than just this subarray, which has 1 element, or this subarray, which has 1 element, remember we want the longest such subarray. So since this subarray 3 and 3 has 2 elements, we return 2. So we're returning the length or the count of the subarray itself. In this case, the count for this subarray would be 2 because there's 2 elements in the subarray, right? Boom, right here. So that's why we return 2. We're not returning the subarray itself. We're just returning the count of that subarray. So let's go ahead and take a look at example 2. It's the similar principles, but let's go through it anyway. So in example 2, we have our input nums equals an array of integers 1, 2, 3, and 4. The output is 1. Explanation says the maximum possible bitwise AND of a subarray is 4. The longest subarray with that value is just 4, so we return 1. So in this case, the maximum bitwise AND would be 4, right? And we can achieve that with this 4 right here. Now this 4 right here only has one subarray. Only has one element. So the count is 1, the length is 1, so we return 1 because there's only one 4 in this array, this subarray. So I hope that makes sense to y'all. And now that we understand the question, let's get into the fun part, the actual solution. Solution is not that difficult. First thing we're going to do is we're going to find the maximum number in the array. So for that, we're just going to declare a variable called max num, and we're going to set that equal to nums.max, put the parentheses. Then we're going to say, then we're going to initialize our result, which we're going to start at 1 because there's going to be at least one occurrence of the maximum number in the array. So for that, we could just come right here, declare a variable called result, and we could set that equal to 1. Boom. Then we're going to create another variable which is going to keep track of the current streak of consecutive max num values. So similar to this, like this has 3 is the maximum number in this array. This is the length of the streak, the current streak of consecutive max num numbers, right? So these are consecutive numbers or consecutive max num numbers, right? So we're going to keep track of how many those we can fit into one subarray by saying we're just going to declare a variable called current, and we're going to set that equal to 0 to start. Boom. Now we need to iterate over each number in the array. So we're going to say for num in nums. We're going to open up the bracket. And if num is equal to max num, then we're going to open up the bracket. And if the current number equals the maximum number, we're going to increase the current streak count. So we're going to say current plus equals 1. Boom. Else, so we're going to come right here and we're going to say else. If the streak is broken, we're going to update the result to the longest streak seen so far. So we're going to say result equals max, open up the parentheses, result, comma, current. So whichever one has the longest streak is going to return the maximum value of that and store it in result. Boom. Then we're going to come underneath that. We need to reset the current streak count after that. So we're going to say current equals 0. Then all we have to do, y'all, is come right here and we can say return result. And that should be all she wrote, y'all. So let's go ahead and give it a run. Make sure it runs properly. Let's see. Let's see, and it's accepted. So let's go ahead and submit it. Make sure it's still accepted after we submit it. Oh, we got the wrong answer. So let's see where we went wrong. Sorry, y'all, we're gonna return the max of the result, comma, current. So that should be all she wrote. Now let's submit it, see if this works. Let's see, and it's accepted, y'all. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I like to see. So with that being said, y'all, I hope y'all learned something today, and I hope to see y'all here tomorrow for another day, another LeetCode problem. See y'all then.